morning, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Friends. So, before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about what the Misfit Amish have accomplished this last year in 2022. Number one, we began data collection on the research study that I co wrote with Dr. Tara Mitchell. We completed data collection and we completed data analysis. Reminder that this is an approved research study that was approved by the Lock Haven University IRB, Institutional Review Board, for those who do not know what that means. I actually got to spend time with Chris on their 40th birthday in Lancaster, which was wonderful and amazing. And I hope that we can have more celebrations like that. The next thing is that the Plain People's Podcast, the Misfit Amish, and A Better Way raised enough money to print over 500 copies of how to report booklets for Amish. And we actually took 500 copies of those booklets to an Amish abuse awareness meeting and disseminated over 200 of those booklets at that meeting, among other resources that we also printed and disseminated there. We left them a total of 500 booklets. They continued disseminating them after that meeting and other various meetings. And in March, I met with other advocates and 3 board members from Dove's Nest in regards to Dr. Harder's harmful information that she puts out in regards to Amish survivors. In April, I spoke at a seminar with Dr. Tara Mitchell on child abuse prevention in Lancaster County, PA, and we also completed our plain dressing clothing project. That was a joint project with myself, Hope Ann Dick from A Better Way, and Ruth Ann. This was displayed at the seminar in Lancaster County, PA. And I wrote and obtained signatures for an open letter to Dr. Jeanette Harder, and we made it public. After Sins of the Amish was released in May, I got to spend time with Jasper, and that was, quite frankly, wonderful. We got to go up in the mountains and have a good time. We recorded and published our second season of Plain Rainbows, which tells the stories of LGBTQ Amish and Anabaptists. We completed 4 different Zoom trainings for domestic violence agencies in multiple states. And I spent time with Stephanie from Into Account and Jay from Into Account. Into Account, A Better Way, and the Misfit Amish published a joint report on Dr. Harder in July. An advisory board member served as a consultant on a research study in PA about rural populations. We compiled and mailed packets of information regarding Dr. Jeanette Harder to Goshen and Bluffton College. And we started doing lives with Lori in regards to Amish and Mennonite issues. Chris, one of our advisory board members, spoke at a local event in PA regarding the Anabaptist experiences. I traveled to DC to speak at the conference on rights and religious forums. It was amazing. I wrote and published a book, and we started formatting our research for submission to publish it. We also held multiple fundraisers for underprivileged, where we reached the fundraiser goals and people were able to better navigate their transition from an Anabaptist life to a non-Anabaptist life. We provided support for survivors. And at the end of the day, we couldn't have done this without all of you. All of the Patreon subscribers who have sat here and provided monetary support, because you are supporting the goals of the Misfit Amish. You have provided financial support that has allowed me to be able to pay for some of this travel expenses out of my own pocket. And for that, I can never repay you, because it means so much to be able to support people in the way that they need to be supported. And with that being said, Let's start with talking about resolutions. Let me bring our guest. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing? Yeah.
Well, I'm not making any resolutions, so there's that.
Yeah.
What about
Uh,
you?
I'm not either. I get we had talked about it a little bit before the show. I have a little bit of mixed feelings over it, but I think the whole idea of the beginning of a year having to do all these things is a little bit silly. I guess we set goals for ourselves throughout. I do, anyways, throughout the year. So it's one
Now,
day
do
is a little
you
bit ridiculous to pin everything down on.
do you reevaluate those goals?
I do. Now,
What's a
that's the thing. It's normally at the end of the year whenever it's winter and I'm stuck inside anyway and have to deal with myself, completely anyways at that point.
so what what is the difference between like an idea or like a goal? Like what do you mean when you set a goal? Are you writing down goals? What are you doing? How
I
do
don't
you set a goal?
I don't know that I should probably start writing down my goals and having them. I keep more of a mental note though, typically, of where I am right now and where I want to be and where that's my brother. Hey.
Hi.
Um, but yeah, of where I've come from, how far I've come. I think that's an important part about setting goals too. Is like it's important to look back and also look at the things that you have done right and it like how far you've come from where you used to be, and
Well,
that can affect the way that you're setting things going forward.
so for me, I do write down goals. I actually have a whole notebook filled of like, projects, specific projects, and like where I'm at and like reaching those projects or like where we're at and reaching the goals of those projects.
Yeah,
Like I write down goals. I've always done this. Like for example, when I was going to college and I was taking a psychology class, I wrote a paper on like I wrote a whole thing about like my 5 and 10 year goals, right? And my 10-year goal was to buy a house, which is ironically hilarious because by the time I turned 30, which was not 10 years later, I bought a house. Like,
yeah.
because sometimes I think for me, I find that when I write it down, it's something tangible. It's something I can see. It's something I can go back to. I can readjust it. I can make other plans to meet those goals.
I guess I guess I say that I don't write my goals down, but I do. They're just scattered notes. You know what I mean? I'm not good at getting
You don't have
actual
like the whole picture put in like one document, but you have
right.
like you write down like this idea and this idea and this
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah, like that's
yeah.
yeah. And that's okay too. But ultimately, I'm not making any New Year's goals because I'm with Sue here. I think that it is really ridiculous to pin it all on like one day. What does one day have to do with making a whole new goal or a
Yeah.
resolution? Or like and often like what I've observed is like people make all these New Year's resolutions of like, well, I'm going to blah 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 blah. And then they find themselves like being really stressed out because they're putting like specific demands on themselves that are oftentimes unrealistic. So how do you set realistic goals for yourself?
I think that takes learning patience with yourself to be able to do that. Like for me it did. I can't because you're going to mess up. You're going to have things that come along. This is the big issue I have with like the symbolism in AA and stuff like that is because it that chip means so much to some people that as soon as something happens, just the slight mess up, then it's just that's all that gets focused on then. It's all of those years that's why I won't say, that's why I won't keep track of when I quit smoking last. I'm not going to. I don't it's that's not me now. So that's fine. I don't need to focus on that. I'll
Yeah.
focus going forward instead.
So it becomes are you saying that it becomes all encompassing?
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
kind of becomes their identity?
Yeah. Exactly.
Because I mean, like we are so much more than like one adverse event.
Right.
We
Yeah.
really are. Like all of us, all of you listening, we're so much more than one adverse event. And the other thing is sometimes we learn best by doing.
I
And
I
go
was
ahead.
go I was gonna say that we can hold ourselves accountable for mess ups without beating ourselves up. Like I think that's an important thing that I had to learn along the way. And like these things that we're talking about aren't helpful with that.
So how do you hold yourself accountable without beating yourself up? Want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Ooh, oops, my bad. Uh, So as far as like going back to what we were talking about, for me, how I feel like is better for me to hold myself accountable without beating myself up is like, yes, it happened. I did mess up. I did just do something that isn't in alignment with my ethics and values. Now that I better understand, I was given new information. Now I'm going to change my actions in the future. But I can't sit here and tell myself I'm a terrible person for not knowing these things.
Right.
I can't sit here and tell myself I deserve bad things because I did not know better. But when you start thinking about, you know, Maya Angelou's saying, like, when you know better, you do better. Like, when people do know better, they tend to do better. And why is that? Because they've had access to information that allows them to do better. We can't do better when we've been browbeat to believe that, for example, let me just give you a classic one when we've been browbeat to believe that talking about something means that you're unforgiving and then we talk about it, do we sit there and we beat ourselves up for talking about it, and does it actually mean that we're unforgiving? Because to me it doesn't. Talking about an adverse event does not mean that you haven't forgiven the person. It has nothing to do with forgiveness. Talking about an adverse event is oftentimes done to raise awareness because, in order to solve a problem, we have to actually name the problem first. We can't solve a problem that doesn't exist, and the problem doesn't exist until we name it. So, how are we kinder to ourselves? How do we do that? How do we navigate that in our lives after we escape all of this? How do you do that?
There's a few different things that I've had to had to do for that. I mean, for one, like whenever we come to think when if I can go back a little bit here, whenever it comes to like those those times that I'm messing up and everything, I've had to learn to have patience with myself a lot, uh, and and understanding. And I've noticed that like a lot of the issues that I struggled with were things that the damage that was done, the trauma that I'd been through and everything has caused me to be stunted in a way almost like a child. And I've had to be there for myself the same way that I would be for a child. And in that sense, like if you've been beaten down over and over again about flaws about yourself or these things that you didn't do right for the person saying that um you weren't good enough, whatever. Uh just you have to be that parent that you didn't have in that sense. you have to be that parent for yourself, and you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to be kind with yourself. And some of that comes from, we had talked about self affirmations right before, and that
Ooh,
that's a very good way, I think, of doing it. As well as, I don't know if these were self affirmations or not. The ones that I had, that I'd mentioned, I believe those are called something else, but I can't think of what it is. But it's just, like self affirmations. I consider the kind of the positive traits and stuff, and focusing on those things about yourself that you do like. And on that note, you can focus on those things and still say that you could improve these things some.
and the other thing is learning gentleness with yourself. And you're absolutely right about self affirmations and reparenting yourself. We were
Yeah,
never intended to reparent ourselves. That was never the way that it was meant to be. And when you have suffered from so much betrayal from people that were supposed to be there, inherently, both like what society tells us, what people tell us, in like mental health professions, what people tell us in pastoral roles, like what people tell us in the ministry, like we are told our parents are like, they're our safety net as children, they are our safety net. And when you suffer from that betrayal of like your parents blaming you for the abuse that you experienced that was preached from the pulpit, that takes a lot of learning and being open to growth to be able to navigate that and make your life make sense after that. And when you practice affirmations and you practice gentleness and you practice kindness to yourself and you practice the ability to learn, like celebrate the ability to learn new things, because that's how we grow that's how we evolve as humanity. We evolve like that by learning, by being curious, by experiencing new things and by figuring things out for ourselves. Like I myself practice affirmations. I actually use an app on my phone that sends me daily affirmations, by the way. And I have these wonderful cards. Okay. Should we talk about the cards?
yeah.
I mean, I think they're great. They're called like sweet affirmations, sweet ass affirmations. Let's just go there. So like for example, like I drew this card and it says I have the best fucking life ever. And on the back of it it says you are alive. If that's not enough to make you raging ecstatic, then what is? You live in a world full of unlimited abundance and opportunity. You have magical senses to interact with your experience and you decide how you want to view it all. Wire your brain to focus on the positives and you will experience positives. Make time with your optimistic side and you will pop out optimistic babies to surround you for the rest of your life.
I like your
I mean,
deck better than mine. I've just got this.
like I'm just saying, like have a sense of humor about it too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes a sense of humor, it really is it's a coping skill.
Oh yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like
You gotta laugh about these things.
I mean, like, you gotta find the things to laugh. You gotta find the good stuff in life too, because you know what? There are good things in life.
Yeah.
And when we're down in the pits, it is really hard to see those things. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to feel the bad too. I'm not saying, like, don't pretend like it never happened. I'm saying that maybe it's possible for the two to coexist side by side.
Right.
Maybe you can have good things and you still had all these adverse experiences.
Yeah.
Just maybe. It's just a thought.
Maybe things aren't black and white.
Oh. Oh, do tell me more. Tell me more. Help me.
I really liked that idea too. My brother did start doing that, the dry erase boards around the house, and I think that's a good way of doing that too. Kind of, you could write your self affirmations on those things and kind of keep them up to, along with your tasks or whatever, even that you have for the day. Or
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm. Like, what are you doing? What is your life purpose? Why are you here? And when you understand that sometimes bad things can exist right alongside good things, and you accept that, it can really give you a sense of like, I can figure out what to do with my life.
Right.
But it can really be devastating in the moment. It really can. When you
Yeah.
realize that, because like for me, like, and I have to ask you this because for me, like, it was very much a black and white. Like, if you were in the church, then this is your goals and this is where you need to be and blah 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 blah. And if you escaped the church or you went out into the world, you were a runaway Beschwatzsprunge, which means like you're a runaway, right? And you're of the world. You're not like, there's not really much hope for your soul, right? And
Right.
so there's this like black and white thinking, but in actuality, like, when I realize that, like, how is this that the people that are out in the world that are showing me more kindness and compassion and empathy and support and providing access to resources to help me navigate my life in a way that made sense to me. Like, how is that? Like, um, I the
It's almost like that's what they were scared of to begin with, huh? You know, like,
like the the amount of betrayal I felt by my church
yeah.
community and by my family was so big. So how does has that affected you in any way?
Oh yeah. And like it's still just talking about it sometimes you still have those. I don't know if you experience this too, maybe. I imagine you do, but you still have, no matter what you do, there is still this thing in the back of your head going, you don't talk about this. You can't talk about this. What are you doing talking about this?
I hear the bishop's voice.
Yeah.
I literally hear the bishop's voice. And I have concluded and resolved that despite hearing that voice, I'm still going to speak.
Right.
Because you know what? Just because I was born with a vagina doesn't mean that my voice isn't valid. Thank you. That is the logical conclusion that I have come to
Yeah.
after exposure to much more information.
That's
Like,
same. Just because I don't fit in the box that they created, that they said
right,
I fit in, doesn't mean that I'm any less valid.
right. Because when you start understanding humanity and you start understanding human rights, if every human is valid and every human deserves human rights, then why do we not get to have a voice? And why do we not get to speak?
Right.
And who gets to decide that? So, when I say take back your power, take back your voice, I believe
Yeah.
all of you can do that. Always speak. Sometimes your voice is all you have. That's right. Even if your voice shakes, even if your voice trembles, always speak. But with that being said, now that we've talked about not having New Year's resolutions, let's talk about some of the goals, because as far as I'm concerned, like, I do run an organization and I want to continue to set goals that mean something to all of us that work with the organization, and we can set those goals that mean something to us. Ooh, and did I mention earlier that BJ has created so much beautiful art for the Misfit Amish? God, it's just amazing because it's like one of those things, like, art is something we don't really have a lot of in the traditional sense, but we have very specific art. And so BJ's art is very meaningful to me, and I'm just like in awe sometimes of some of the things she comes up with, and it means so much just to
That's
have that.
awesome.
Um But other things that we want to continue doing is we want to continue providing trainings to professionals who come in contact with Amish survivors. We want to continue with formatting our research and submitting it for publication. Hopefully, we can get to that before the end of 2023, at least submitting it. We don't know if it'll be published in that journal that we have selected, but we're going to work towards it, right? And part of what I'm doing is like really setting an achievable goal. And when we talk about setting achievable goals, it's like you have a plan. Is it achievable? You have to evaluate how much time do I have to devote to this project? Do I have the mental capacity to spend this amount of time on it? Do I have the mental capacity to spend 20 hours a month on this research project? Or do I only have the time to spend, 2 hours a month on this research? And, how much work am I going to get done on this project? So, what is a reasonable, achievable goal for that? And that's where I talk about setting goals. And so, if I go through this year and I see that 6 months down the road, I'm not going to meet the goal of submitting it for publication by December 2023. I'm going to reevaluate and I'm going to say, okay, what is more achievable?
Right. Yeah, because those things change throughout the year. You might end up at the beginning of the year having
Right,
X amount of time to be able to deal with these things, but then things in your personal life come up to where you don't have that amount of time anymore.
right,
You're having to exert those resources somewhere else, and it's
right.
not reasonable for you to continue having that same goal with that in mind, or not in that time frame anyways. You can allow yourself some room with those things, and it doesn't have to be the end of the
You know,
world that you've failed or something. You haven't failed. It's not reasonable. The expectations you have aren't reasonable for those things. So
so set yourself reasonable expectations.
yeah.
And furthermore, okay, maybe I'm terrible, but I gotta say this. Maybe, just maybe, if you are a survivor who has like experienced church abuse and you've seen like your abuser was somebody in the church and the church extended all of this grace towards the abuser, maybe show yourself that grace that the church showed the abuser. And this may sound ridiculous, but truthfully, you deserve that same amount of grace and
Deserve more. Yeah.
more. Like you are worthy of that. I promise you you're worthy of that. But anyways, it kind of made me laugh to say that, and I don't know why. Probably because I'm inappropriate. But I mean, like I have long said this, I want churches to extend the same or more grace to the survivors of their crimes that they do to the criminals within their benches,
Yeah.
within their pews, within, like, come on, you can do that. Obviously, we see you doing it for the criminals all the time. So you are capable of extending grace. So where is your grace? I I'd really like to ask that. But regardless, I think that's all I got on like New Year's.
Same. Are we ready for the real fun?
Yes, yes. Shall we? Shall we? Shall we? Let's.
Church and just for
This.
just the way you provide for each ministry that we have. We pray for our missionaries. We pray especially for those churches that are still dealing with the hurricane results. Pray for this missionary couple that the Shields know in Puerto Rico, and it's just devastating there. We just pray.
I just want to point out that a lot of times people use thoughts and prayers as like a weapon. And it's like this glorified thing where they're like, oh, I can pat myself on the shoulder. I did something good for those
Oh
people that
yeah.
are suffering. So it really kind of is upsetting to me when people say thoughts and prayers.
For those
Yeah.
folks and just pray for that missionary and his family as he tries to be a blessing there through this very difficult time.
Well, what's
Just
funny
give us a
about
good rest
that
of service
too,
now in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
I mean, they're praying for all of these people that they claim that their God is in control of everything. So what does that say about these people that are going through these devastating things? That they're why didn't your God choose to help them?
That's
Why did your God choose to fucking do this to them? You say that he's in control, that he's wrote all of this is already written.
well, I'd really like to understand that myself. That's a really valid point.
I
Well,
will warn you, like, we might want to skip through the singing because this might be just this is
okay, let's see how the singing goes. Thou heathens!
Are we doing something wrong, Mary?
This is just taking it too far. We just don't know. I just don't know if I can listen to this. This just sounds like something for fearish, misleading. Okay? This music, Satan wants you
That
to have music.
Satan, the owner of the piano?
It's always Satan on the music. We just can't do the music.
His word shall not fail you, we promise.
They are harmonizing. We don't know. That is not pleasing to the Lord.
Do you guys have to sing out of tune to to not harmonize?
Well, and
on purpose?
everybody should be singing, not just a group of people. That is not pleasing to the Lord. We should all lift our voices in glory to the God of the highest.
Believe him and all will be well. Then go.
Okay. Believe and all will be well. We've heard it all now. I think we're good. We don't need to watch anymore, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But where was that when I was being raped?
Right? That's the difficult questions they don't want to answer. It's then suddenly it goes into the muddy waters of God has some plan.
Oh, it's the divine plan? Well, maybe the
Yeah.
divine plan is I will expose what you did to me. Maybe that's the divine plan. I suggest a new divine plan. I'm okay, if he was watching, which by the way, one of our listeners commented he
Yeah.
was watching, and I'm just going to say if he was watching, isn't that considered voyeurism? And at that point, wouldn't it have
Yeah.
been child porn?
Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
Okay, so is this like preaching now?
Yeah, they'll do a little bit more bullshitting, and then like it's probably a couple more minutes in when you see the pastor up the pulpit, and there it
This?
is. Yep.
All right, let's see what preaching we have today.
Oh, yeah. Chip sold. Yeah, that's right. Chip bought some and different ones. Who'd you sell your stuff to, guy?
Oh, they're
Your
still,
dad?
it's their church family talk, talking about selling
Oh,
cows
okay.
at the
Okay. These
FFA
guys bought cool.
auction.
Who's Larry? Oh, Larry bought some. Cool. Jarrett Racing. Yeah. It's good. What'd you buy? The cow? Hog. Okay. Good deal. Then how your cow was you sell the cow?
Why are we talking about buying a cow and a hog in the
Right.
preaching with the
Right.
congregation members? Like,
This is what
I'm
they
sorry.
do.
What?
Yeah.
That isn't, is it really? Like, I mean, like if ministry is appointed by God and their preaching is akin to them being the mouthpiece of God, does God approve of capitalism? Like, I'm just asking. I'm trying to understand what God he's worshiping. Okay? Like, I'd really like
Yeah.
to understand that.
Give to
Cow
Caesar
too?
what is
No,
Caesar's.
no.
That's
That was a dairy cow. Gotcha. Okay. They did well. I saw pictures and different things, and everybody did good. So that's glad it's over. Parents? Yeah. So it's over. All right. Ephesians chapter 6 this morning. We're continuing on with our kind of a mini series. I didn't know it was going, I didn't know how long it would take, but some of these, I want to give time to each piece of the armor that we need to be putting on. And so I guess now it's going to take us a few more weeks to get through all of this. But as we think about this lesson, this message this morning, we're going to be talking about the shield of faith. The shield of faith. Now, I know
Look,
Ron and Sue are sitting there looking past me up there with all this technology. See that? Man, oh man, I've come a long way. I didn't know how to turn a computer on when they knew me. And but BJ's got me trained. He's got me going up here. So bottom line is we're going to look today about the shield of faith. Now, this is an important piece of the armor. Protection is very important of our life. How many of you lock your doors at night? Anybody? Hopefully you do. We sometimes, hopefully, if you...
Okay, but why you got to lock your doors?
Yeah.
You're being protected by an all-powerful.
Yeah, what about that armor of God? Why are you...
You have the armor of God. You just said you got the armor of God. So why you locking your doors? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense.
You probably wore your seatbelt on the way here. Try to protect yourself as best you could.
Why did you need a seatbelt?
Some may choose to do other things, as far as maybe as we see on in the world today. Some decide to carry weapons and that type of thing. Whatever we do for protection. It's common knowledge that there are dangers in this world today. There's dangers, but as we've talked about before, we're not talking about those type of this. We're putting on the whole armor of God because we have an enemy. It's not an enemy we can see necessarily. It's Satan, and those things. He's fiery darts of the wicked one. He tries to attack us in our Christian life as we're trying to serve him. And so as we think about protection, we need spiritually to be protected. And we need that protection. That's why God has told us, as we said, looked at verse 11 of chapter 6, put on the whole armor of God. We need to put it on. Something we need to do every day. You don't just do it once a week. Just pick a day to lock your doors. Which day days you leave? That's silly. You need to do it every day to protect your family at night. You lock your doors every night. Every day you get up, we need to put on the whole armor of God. So we want to look now at the fourth piece of the armor, and this piece is a little different. This piece is different in the fact that this is not something you put on. This is something you'd carry with you, okay? We're looking at the fourth piece as we get here. Look at verse 15, actually verse 16. Above all, taking the shield of faith. So it doesn't say, above all, put on the shield of faith. That'd be hard to do. Put on a shield. You take.
Okay, so where I went wrong, I just figured it out. This is where I went wrong. I didn't take the shield of faith.
No?
I didn't take the shield of faith. I mean, I was behind my locked bedroom door, but I didn't take the shield of faith.
Yeah.
That's where it all went wrong. Oh, one of my commenters says, so what about you, Mary, behind your locked bedroom door, and yet it still didn't help?
Yeah.
Victim blaming at its best.
Yep.
Thank you. That is exactly what that is. So how can a survivor in that congregation stand forward and say, I was abused?
Yeah.
Behind the locked doors. And also, let me also point this out. Most of the people that perpetuate sexual assault and sexual abuse are known to their victims. They are not strangers necessarily. It is a small percentage of people that do not know their abuser that sexually abuses them. So how does that affect all the people sitting in these pews of this church?
Right. And you saw the opening of where he's making everyone feel like family. We know this person down here. He's he's selling cows over at the FFA over in da 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 da, and it's all of this very welcoming shit to try to lure people if they've got new people in. It's the structure of it. It's all just terrible the way that it unfolds.
Yeah. So they have goals and how they're like they're very sophisticated in how they lure people in with this promise of a church family, with this promise of safety, with this promise of absolution. Like, if you do these things, then you're going to be safe. You're going to be going to
The
heaven.
the world's scary outside. Why do
Right.
we lock our doors?
Right. And they fail to recognize the behind closed doors.
What do you need armor for, Mary? Do you see people around you wearing armor every day?
No.
Why would you need armor? They don't go into that, right? They don't want to talk about that.
Why do you need armor? And then usually the abuser has been plotting and scheming for years. From one of our other listeners, thank you so much. Yes, usually it's a plot, and they manipulate the people around them to believe that they would never do such a thing. And it's very effective in closed insular communities because there's such a lack of access to other information, and because of this like sophisticated version of like, this is our church home, this is safety. And like, here's a question. There's a whole list of like, you were Independent Fundamentalist Baptist, right?
Right.
Okay. So there's this whole list of like Baptists who were committing sexual crimes. How many of these people in this congregation are committing sexual crimes that we're not talking about?
Right.
It truly makes
right?
sense.
And so this isn't put on. This is taken with us. We must reach out, take hold, and then we need to learn how to use this piece of armor. It's like anything else. If you don't know how to use it, it's not much good to you. And the shield of faith is like that. We need to learn how to use our faith. We need to understand the importance of faith in our daily life.
You have to use your armor. If you don't use it, it don't work.
So even though I was behind a closed bedroom door, at the end of the day, I did not take a hold of my shield of faith. I know where it all went wrong. That's what this is.
Yeah.
I did not take a hold of my shield of faith, and therefore it didn't work. I didn't do it right. It was all my fault. Yeah.
Should have been wearing it every day just in case.
Because it helps us, as we said there, to stand.
Say what?
So it should have been holding that thing every day just in case. Just in case something. I don't. You know what I mean? It's such an idiotic metaphor. Something that they don't even think out.
No, yeah. Where was the armor for the adopted kids that guy molested right in that very church?
I don't know if he had molested them or not. He got caught with child porn on his phone.
Oh, that one.
And he had kids that were adopted and stuff too, that were in and out of there. Like they were, what do they call that? I guess there was like a kid from overseas that they were
international adoption?
Yeah, fostering. I think they were fostering a kid or something, but yeah, he had adopted kids and stuff too in that house, and who the hell knows? We
don't even know. Does he?
But I know I know that stuff did make the news, and that is what he got charged for, was that.
Wow. Yeah, where was the armor? Because
yeah.
Where was the armor?
And against the wiles of the devil. So as we think about that, we want to talk about a few things about the shield this morning. And I've got some pictures up here. I think it'll help us to understand a little bit more about.
Wait, we have pictures?
Oh yeah, he's gonna put it up. That's the
Oh.
baptismal pool behind that thing that he.
The actual
Okay, I got to see these pictures, and then I think I'm done watching this.
All right.
shield that Paul is describing here, as he was thinking, I believe, probably of the Roman soldier, and how those shields help to protect them, and then how to apply that to us spiritually today. Let's pray. We'll get started. Father, we thank you for your word today. We thank you for the opportunity to look at this passage. It's something that's very important to us. We need to be doing this ourselves every single day, to put on the whole armor of God.
So repetitive,
We have an enemy.
right?
He desires to get us discouraged, defeat us, to get us sidelined from serving.
He's
Why?
said that same sentence like 20 times.
Why are we talking about the Roman soldiers in a war? Like,
We just pray, help us to put on the
Why?
whole armor of God. Today we learn about the shield of faith. Now we need to learn to use it, to have it with us each day. I just pray this be a very practical message, something we can apply even today as we go out these doors. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. First of all, we think about the inspection of the shield. The inspection of the shield. We think
We
about
aren't going to be
the
able to
inspection
see
of the shield.
pictures.
To inspect the shield, we need to know what type of shield it was. Again, I think Paul had envisioned in his mind, again, he's Roman. I think he envisioned the soldier, the Roman soldier, and what he would have, that shield of faith, as he's looking at that. And so the first thing we need to do is the construction of the shield. Now, there were different types of shields. Different types of biblical shields. You're going to find different things come up.
what? I'm sorry. What even is this? Because again, he's just being repetitively saying that if you put this shield on and if you do this shield right, so basically, I'm just not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. That's it. So explain to me how an abuse survivor is supposed to be attending this church and finding some way to make sense of their life after they have been devastated by abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up with my dad physically being violent to my mom. Where, what was I not doing the fucking shield thing right? Brian fucking B. Was I not taking up my armor well enough? Like, he can go fuck himself.
Like, you were a kid.
Yeah.
It's not your fault. It is not your fault. And so, like, I think you're right that we won't be able to see the pictures. But, I mean, like, I just want to, again, I'm
funny
going to take
part is
this off.
I did have the picture somewhere. He had a printout for everybody too on this thing. I remember
my
this
God.
specific fucking thing. I only ran across this on their Facebook page that I'd shared with you. But yeah, I used to have that in one of the Bibles, and I might have burned it by now. But it was
Oh
yeah.
my God. Like, you were children listening to this, experiencing domestic violence,
Yeah.
which is adverse effects in childhood. They're adverse childhood experiences. And so you're given this message that if you put on your armor of God appropriately, this wouldn't be happening. So what if, like, it happened? Did people reach out to the ministry for support? How would the ministry respond to that?
I don't know, because the thing is, like, these are things that you didn't talk about. These are things that you didn't discuss because it was embarrassing for your family and things of that nature. Everybody would bullshit. The congregation would all, talk before these services and stuff. And people are nib shitty, and yeah, you just didn't talk about these things.
So then how do you navigate that as an adult? How do you make sense of your life after that?
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
For me, I've had to, well, I had to abandon the fucking armor of faith because it wasn't doing shit for me. Faith never did anything except for keep me from questioning things. I had to take up things like skepticism rather than uh, trust and faith and in something that's unproven. For me, moving forward meant finding better tools to be using in my life that didn't put me in such vulnerable positions as that. Um, and it certainly isn't on, it's not me blaming myself for these fucking things like they'd have you do.
Well, would you say that part of that sermon and that theology, and again, like bad theology, right? Like it's horrific, right? But would you say that part of it, did you ever feel like part of it is like you as a child were responsible for other people's actions or inactions?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
as an adult, do you find that to be something that you still ascribe to?
No,
Why not?
because I know more about things now. um, I've had to do a lot of work on myself and realize that nobody could do that work for me. That if somebody's going to change me, it had to be me. Um, it's why my Satanism is or Satanism is Jesus. It's I had to be my own Jesus. There, I didn't have somebody to come take my burdens away from me. They are there, and I have to deal with them. I have to be the one. And like we had discussed with kind of being our own parents in these situations of having to be there for yourself and let yourself know that it wasn't your fault, that these things weren't because of you,
Hmm.
and finding a certain amount of resolve in that itself, that I'm an adult now, and I've got my things right here. I don't have to fear being abandoned or destroyed, as I can take care of myself. I have flaws like everyone, but I'm working to correct these. Others will not change because I want them to change.
And I can be better every day than I was
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah,
Believing that you can be better, that you can learn better is also important, because if we tell ourselves we cannot learn better, we are literally setting ourselves up for failure, because we are telling ourselves we cannot do better than this, when in fact we are all capable of growth and we are all capable of doing better. To know better is to do better. Again, let's quote Maya Angelou, because that saying has really made a difference in my life. That is like, yeah, that's really powerful. Powerful stuff, Slu.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that sermon with me. I mean, I don't even know if you can call it a sermon. I feel like that's a
It,
let's blame people for adverse events in their lives. That's what
right.
I feel like it is. And I
Yeah,
don't appreciate that. And I think that churches can do better than that.
yeah.
They
I
really
think
can.
I think their God could do better if they think that it's so almighty and powerful and everything. Eh, let's see
Yeah.
it. Let's see you
Well,
fucking do something. Let's see you stop these things then.
well, I mean, to be fair, like, you know that I've hosted Jimmy Hinton, who is a pastor who actually he wrote a book. It's called The Devil Inside, right? I read his book and I had reached out to him, and he was a guest on my podcast for several things. And then I was a guest on his podcast after I published my book. But one of the things that I've really appreciated about Jimmy is that Jimmy actually, one, Him and his mother reported the sexual abuse of his father. His father was a pastor. His father is in prison because they did the right thing.
Yeah.
Because they did, and furthermore, like Jimmy's very adamant about, like, your churches can't be a safe place if you're giving abusers access to more potential victims. So when you start like seeing that kind of shift in like church leaders, like I feel like if we could get more church leaders to do that, then we can have meaningful change. But in the same token, many people don't want to change because to change is uncomfortable. Growth can be really uncomfortable.
As long as you're basing your whole system off of faith, you're never going anywhere. You're spinning your wheels on that, and it's not. That's you can insert whatever unreasonable thing that you want, and say that you're taking that on faith,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to make sense at that point. Then they get to make things not make sense and make it make sense out of faith.
But it doesn't make sense.
No, but it makes sense because if you really think about it, because faith.
Well, I mean, but it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like, but even like if you read the Bible, like if
Yeah.
you really like, read the Bible, you start like comprehending like all of these things. Like, there are many verses in there that talk about like not harming your children. So, like, where is that?
I don't know. It gets buried by all of the killing and shit that's in there, like 400 and some times, or the.
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, I want to believe that people can change. I really do.
I
It's
thought
like,
it was funny too that post that I had. Tommy Wren had said something about 365 times in the Bible, God tells you not to be afraid, and my answer was like, if somebody is telling you 365, if I have to tell you, Mary, 365 times not to be afraid of me, there is something I'm fucking doing wrong. Like, there is some actions not matching those fucking things, you're
yeah.
you're abusing somebody 365 times to fucking tell them that they aren't supposed to be scared of you.
Because when people show you who they are, whether you consciously recognize it or not, you can tell whether or not their words match their actions. And I'm all fresh out of patience for words not matching actions. I am out of patience. I
Same.
have none. I have none. Zero. Because you know what? Words not matching actions is also known as manipulation. I just want your words to match your actions when you're telling me that you are doing things for the betterment of our future generations. Your words should match your actions. I don't feel like that's a lot to ask for.
No.
But with that being said, do you have any parting words of advice for our listeners?
I I don't know what good words of parting advice I have in my mind right now, other than I would tell you to be good to yourselves, and if you are going through bad times and everything, if you are still stuck in a religion, or you're still, everybody's at different places in their lives. If you're still in that mindset or whatever, don't think that I'm here just beating up on your God or your religion or any of that. I've been right where you are, and it takes a lot to question those things. And I'd ask you not to be afraid so afraid to question things that you just end up clinging to faith your whole life to answer everything for you. There are other resources that aren't just the Bible that everybody relies on, whether they want to admit it or not. And I think we should. I hope that you guys will start taking those things a little more seriously rather than just one book.
Well, and I would also say, I want to say this to our listeners is like, sometimes you just need people to believe in you, that you're going to find your way throughout all of the things that you're experiencing, things that I may not know about and I may never know about. But I believe in you. I want you to know that I believe in you. You will find your way. It is not a bad thing to be curious and to access new information. In fact, it can enlighten you and shape your future actions in ways and that you never dreamt of. It can also bring a fulfillment to your life and make sense of your life in ways that you never thought of. And with that, I'd also like to thank our Patreon subscribers one more time for bringing this wonderful episode of Coffee with Friends. And I'd like to thank our listeners for sticking with us. I appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate all of you listening. And I'd like to invite everybody to check out my book, Reflections and Memories of an Amish Misfit. Looks like that. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle for $2.99. And furthermore, I will see all of you very soon. Happy New Year!